Once the city's civic center was completed, the Free Church met there until completing its sanctuary in 1960. A year earlier, Holy Apostles had expedited their search for a permanent home by moving an existing sanctuary built half a century earlier from Fort Pierce by barge in an event that was reported in Life and Popular Science magazines. In 1959, the Pilgrim Church, now known as the Wesleyan Church, was formed. The congregation initially met in the Civic Center. The pastor, who was also a builder, built the sanctuary and the parsonage by himself with the aid of many members across Cinnamon Drive from the city's Civic Center. This was followed by the First Baptist Chapel of Satellite Beach, now Our Father's House, in 1962 on Cassia Boulevard next to Surfside Elementary School. The next year, Our Savior Lutheran Church began meeting in the Civic Center before moving into its sanctuary on South Patrick Drive at the northern city limits. In 1964, the First Methodist Church of Satellite Beach began holding services with 113 members in its new parsonage. The first services in a permanent assembly building were held in 1966 with 430 people attending.
They had a garden club, and Betty D. Aker was the president, and her husband was a councilman. And then they had all the hedgehog girls. They were all a part of that. They had speakers come and kind of help them out. You know, it's like me at the high school. Sure, I've been there 26 years, and how would I expect a student to know a posy from a weed? We did have a nice garden club, which eventually then became the beautification board.
But along came a couple of people who started what was called the Federated Women's Club. And that started in 1964 with Glennis Holmes and Jenny Pecora. And we used to do a lot of Percy's errands, like running from house to house to get collections that he was asked to take care of. And we ended up doing it. I don't know whether he picked out the Lions Club the way he did us, but
we got together as a group to form our Lions Club. It was a community effort. Percy was the instigator, and got quite a few. I guess we had 30 of us together. That's what you had to have at that time to form a club. The whole council was a member of the club then. But the average age was 26 years old. Percy Smith, of course, was our charter president. Sergio was closed on Tuesdays. We met on Tuesday. So he gave us the restaurant on Tuesday, and Mary cooked for us. And in that small restaurant, I was president during the time we met there. We stuffed as many as 90 members at dinner. And when Mary cooked for you, your plate was piled like this, and Mary made sure you finished your plate before you left. She was a mother to that place.
No business over here, no nothing. And we built the station where the lawnmower shop's at now. And what's the Cove Restaurant, we built that, I built that in '57. We worked on both of them, but Percy Hitchcock owned the service station. He leased it to the Amoco Oil Company. Lou Pavlakis come over from O'Galley and opened up a restaurant over here, which I built where the Cove's at now. That's the same building. It was land and sea at that time. There's been 5 additions put on it.
C.G. Rhodes had built some where the VFW is now and all. And
he lived in that corner house right there where we put the beauty shop on the side of it. That was the corner of A1A and Park Avenue. Mr. Gandy Rhodes had owned a lot of this land. He owned that up there. He built 4 or 6 houses on the east side of A1A. He built 4 on the west side of A1A after we come here. And he gave those houses to people. That old man was worth $13 million back then. That was in '57. He owned thousands of acres up there where the Space Center's at now. The 58 acres that we live on now, he bought and gave it to me and my wife. And I went to Percy Hitchcock and I asked him if I could accept it. He said no. He said we just couldn't accept gifts like that, Percy did. He's the one that owned the Cove Restaurant. That's who I built it for, Mr. Rhodes. Pavlakis didn't own it. He just rented it from Mr. Rhodes.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was some kind of a fundraiser. Percy was great on that. He could get money going very quickly. He said, I'd pinch a penny, it would turn to gold.
We had two big fundraisings to help raise money for the city. One was the Percy got Ford Motor Company to donate 57 Etzel, first Etzel made. And we sold raffle tickets on it, and I think we sold about $10,000 worth. And Percy must have bought about $5,000 off. When it comes to drawing time, who won the Etzel? The mayor.
Well, Percy had bought half the tickets. It was no wonder he won, but he was too embarrassed to take the prize.
Said on Wednesday night, we're going to bring in anybody that wants to come in and auction the Etzel off, and the highest bidder gets it. And I got it for $8,000. Then our second biggest fundraiser was, then we had the golf course, and we still had a little ladies auxiliary and everything and all, and they done a lot of baked goods. We had on Sunday afternoon, Sneed promised him he would come up and put on an exhibition for us. We had the auctions and everything, and he played, I think we played 5 rounds and had four players in each group. It cost $50 a piece to play with him. Sneed did give us a hat, his straw hat to auction off, and Lou Pavlakis bought it for, I believe, $150. They always said Sneed hid all his money in West Virginia in tomato cans, so we paid him off in a tomato can. And he was going to open it, and Percy said, "No, you should open it, it's all there." And we know down 5 miles down the road, he probably stopped and checked and see if it was there and all.
100 people back in could raise more money and get more done than 10,000 down there.
How much Percy gave to the city will never be known.
We went 5 years without any taxes, and we went 5 years without a police department. And in that 5-year period, even though we had no taxes, we gave 3 swimming pools, the city did, to Satellite Hospital. Everybody worked for nothing for a little over 5 years. Our first employer was Pete Mardell, chief of police. He was our first paid employee.
My father was an auxiliary police officer along being with a volunteer fireman. He was a building contractor, he wasn't a police officer. But back then, everybody did everything. The police department was very small. It was not unusual to have one officer have to work the road by himself. Between the 4 cities of Melbourne Beach, Indian Atlantic, Indian Harbor, and Satellite Beach, we were all on the same radio frequency. You'd have only 4 officers working all 4 cities. If 2 officers ended up making arrest, and they were late arrest, and it would leave only 2 officers guarding 4 cities.
There was 13 volunteers. I was one of them. We had a little radio in our house that give you the message where the fire was at, where to go to. They had a big siren up on a pole out there. You could hear it for 5 miles.
They put up a fire siren, and when the siren went off, the volunteers would flock, and they just seemed to come out of the woodwork, which was quite literally true, because most of them were carpenters or builders, and they may be on the roof of a building putting down shingles or inside hanging doors or whatever. They literally dropped their hammers and saws and ran. And that was our fire department.
When we first got started, we needed something to represent the fire department and for the guys to have something that was firefighting equipment. So we went to Camp Landing and we bought a big old pumper, and all it did was pump water. It didn't have any, the racks, the hoses, no nothing. And we brought it home and we kept it in the one side of the garden supply.
The volunteer fire department, we just started that. Joe Wickham was a big help for us to starting that. He got us our first brush truck.
Joe Wickham, the commissioner at the time, he didn't give us a good truck until probably 2 years later. Shine Hedgecock was our chief at that time too, when organized. Started out with Gaines Acuff, but he just changed right on the start. Sean Hitchcock was their chief at the time. And we got trucks from county all that time, but we covered the whole beach area all the way to Patrick Air Force Base in South Merritt Island at that time.
Galley County had a truck in Old Galley, and they ran over here prior to that time, and that was the reason for the fire department, in my estimation. The reason for it was we wanted our own fire department, so we didn't have to go across the river. And at that time, you know, you had the swing bridge and everything, and you didn't know when you could get across or when you couldn't.
Most of the city proper at that time was brush. A lot of brush fires versus structure fires.
It was one of those windy marshes and dry, and it started in the northwest corner of Satellite Beach, went catty corner straight across, and he liked to burn up the whole thing. He liked to burn our fire truck up we just had got. I was driving it, I know, because the fire come over that little road. It wasn't a highway, it's just a street. It just, I knew it could set the truck on fire, but we had plenty of water. We wet the truck down.
On a lot of our fundraisers, when we first started out on our fundraising, having mullet fries, you know, we serve hundreds of pounds of mullet here to raise, you know, money for 3 or 4 years. And then after that, we got into chickens, chicken fries.
There was the Miss Wayne contest that was held for probably close to 10 years. And I think a total of 3 or 4 of our contest local winners went on to win the state titles. But also back then they had a wonderful group of women's auxiliary that were all the wives and girlfriends of all the firefighters.
They supported us all the way back in the day.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. This government feels obliged to report this new crisis to you in fullest detail. Each of these missiles, in short, is capable of striking Washington, D.C., the Panama Canal, Cape Canaveral, Mexico City, or any other city in the southeastern part of the United States.
Russia was coming into Cuba with all these missiles, and we had so long to live, and everybody started moving out of Satellite Beach as fast as they could move out.
I was with the phone company at that time, and I'll never forget, I was called out early in the morning, and the boss called me and said, you need to be up at A1A in Indian Harbor. He said, we need to run some lines in there for the government. I said, okay, I didn't know what it was. In very, very few hours, they were in there with bulldozers, bulldozed it flat, set up hawk bases there. We ran phone lines and communication lines in for them. And from our home, there on Poinciana Court in Satellite Beach, we could see the missiles. We could see the top of the missiles that were all aimed a little bit southwest of here.
Overnight, Patrick set up 4 long-range missiles.
The Army come in there and set up all these emplacements, these anti-aircraft emplacements there. Kids went out there and they just ran up on them, and here's all these soldiers there, you know, ready to shoot down the airplanes.
Military trucks going up and down the street. Remember Kennedy's speech on TV. Remember a lot of buildup at Patrick.
The Acuffs and our Gaines and Nita and my wife and my 3 kids, we decided to pull all our money out of the bank and get out of that place. It's too dangerous for us. So we went down and got the money out of the bank and started driving towards Kissimmee, Florida.
But the reason I know so much about it, I used to have that little beer joint out on the street there, same location as Breeze through. I'd haul them beer back there after a closing time of a night. But the cops called me one night, taking back there, and said, you can't sell beer after midnight. And I said, well, I'm not selling, I'll give it to them. So from then on, I had to give it to them.
News come through that old Khrushchev had give up, and he's going to pull out the troops. So everybody turned around and went back.
We
entertained ourselves by fighting with each other. That's about all we could find to do. There wasn't anybody else around.
Nobody to play with, that's
Nobody
for
to
sure.
play with.
In the 60s, there was not much to do because we didn't have that many kids. I was the first manager of our Little League baseball team, and we had to go all the way down to 8 years old to field the team.
We had a group right there on Norwood that we called the Norwood Gang. All the boys were just about the same age, within 1 year. And they all lived within, shouting distance.
I do recall that Percy built a building up on A1A. That was a teen club. He gave it to allowed the youth to use it.
I'm one to believe that recreation is better than preschool. Recreation prevents crime. I've never had a child in recreation that's getting in trouble.
Well, I have to agree with his philosophy that if you kept the kids busy playing sports, you kept them out of trouble. More or less got talked into helping him with that, and it resulted for, like Mary said, 21 years of Little League coaching. Those early days, Tom had the Longhorn restaurant down there, and when all the softball activities, he had the Longhorn softball team.
At the First Methodist Church, Symmetrics had a team there. These were adult men teams. It was pretty well organized. All the teams had uniforms of one kind or another. And that pretty well died as soon as the Longhorns got involved, because we pretty well dominated the field. The team came together and we started playing tournaments in 71. They won the state 71, 72, 73.
Percy was really instigated. He had a women's team called the Comets, which his daughter Judy played on, who is in the Hall of Fame for the ASA, which is the American Softball Association. Percy is also in the Hall of Fame. And another player on that team was Nancy Oldham, who's also in the ASA Hall of Fame.
How come you met Percy Hedgecock? Well, I think most people would know that no Percy, it would definitely be at a ball field. And it was.
I first started out with a girls' team when I was 17 years old in a wheat field in North Carolina.
Percy Hedgecock was involved in putting a bid in on the first youth softball tournament, national tournament in 1971. Percy again bid on the first USSSA, which is the United States Slow Pitch Softball Association, had the first women's championship held here again at Satellite Beach. During the softball era here at Satellite Beach, we hosted 11 national tournaments. And during that time period, the teams here actually won 8 national championships. The boys team, the Rockets, won both at the 13 to 15 year age and the 16 to 18. And the girls Comets, which were the 16 to 18 year old team, they won 3 national championships. And the Mets, which were the 13 to 15 year olds, they won 3 national championships in consecutive years, and that's never been done before. The community as such was very, very involved. The Lions Club, I remember, would help the women's club, the Alamanders, people would be selling tickets.
Many of us worked hard at the concession stand, and we had $1 million groundskeeper crew. Most of them worked for the Space Center.
We could have a ball game, everybody volunteered. If they felt hurt, if they were, especially when we started having national tournaments, if you wasn't asked to be volunteer, they come to you because they wanted to be part of the city. I was fortunate to manage the softball team, the Satellite Mets, that we won 3 national championships, 80, 81, and 82. And the most thrill was in 82 when we won it here at Satellite Beach.
That was the time, in fact, that accomplishment, no one had ever done that. And Don Porter, who at that time was the president of the American Softball Association, he was the one really that coined the phrase that we deserved the name as the youth softball capital of the world.
Percy and Reg used to get together and talk, and Percy and Reg agreed that the main job for a mayor in this town was to bury all the dead dogs. Because whenever there was a dead dog in the road, the townspeople called the mayor. And so the mayor's job was to get rid of those dead dogs.
We had a lady in town, still have her, and she took affront to the fact that there were a lot of weeds and snakes in town. And she took off after Percy and said, "We can't allow this." So she kind of twisted his arm a little bit, and they ended up taking the city tractor and driving around town into these empty lots and mowing them. Percy at the wheel.
He was something, Percy was. He was out there mowing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Didn't care if he woke you up or what he done. He'd call us all about 4 o'clock to get us up.
If you want your place to be successful and be something you have, be successful and be important, you need to be involved in it.
As Satellite Beach grew, homes and small condominiums dotted the ocean front, but the city owned no beach property for parks.